If you've got time to fantasize about a beautiful death, why not?
I was a Gintama hater. Not really of the anime since I barely gave it a try, but years ago I was pretty harsh on the manga.
Well, as for Gintama, after reading 70 chapters, I dropped it, and I've decided that I'd rather be sodomized with a rusty car bumper than ever have to read this f***ass manga ever again.
Why y'all gave me a career is beyond me. But in my previous entry about Gintama, I went through my journey and came to the conclusion that Gintama is a show I wish I could wipe my memory of and experience for the first time again. At the forefront of why Gintama is awesome is the eccentric main character Gintoki. Gintoki's goated, and I have no idea how long this video will be, but you'll know by the title. In the middle of working on a video for DeGrayman, I found myself doing another typical YouTube title where I have to be all dramatic and shit to grab your attention. It's the game, you know? But in that video I mentioned how DeGrayman is my favorite manga to come out of Weekly Shonen Jump, but my favorite thing, be it anime or manga, is Gintama. Then I remembered a promise I made months ago about making dedicated videos for Takasugi and Gintoki, and so here we are. As a wise man once said, be the change you want to see in the world. So I'll probably end up making this title as honest as possible. Why do many, such as myself, vouch heavily for this character? A large reason Gintoki works as a character lies within the premise of Gintama itself, a parody series about Edo Japan being taken over by aliens. Gintoki is a samurai that runs an odd job shop, and so we follow him, Shinpachi, and Kagura on their absurd adventures. I'm going to quickly make an ass of myself and make an assumption that if you clicked on this video, you already know this. But for those of you that haven't seen Gintama, do yourself a favor. Also, please be self-aware that you clicked on a lengthy video about a series you haven't watched, so f*** you if you complain about spoilers. With all due respect. Anyways, Gintama being a parody series at first puts itself in a unique position when discussing it as a series, and therefore all of the characters pertaining to it, starting off feeling like a Japanese Family Guy, and then turning into a full-blown battle shonen, while never abandoning the great comedy it has. Hideaki Sorachi, while portraying himself as a poo-flinging gorilla, is a unique sort of genius, since in the hands of any other normal human being, this series might not have worked, having the typical rushed and disappointing conclusion many hits in Weekly Shonen Jump have. Yeah, we made millions off your work, now hurry up so we can axe a bunch of series and search for the next series to profit off of. A Japanese company with some tendencies, I suppose. But no, Gintama manages to execute a brilliant balance of comedy and seriousness, and has a great ending. Where I'm going with this is the series, because of its balance of such things, allows for an exploration of its characters, in particular with Gintoki for example, that we don't get to see with other protagonists. Take any other series that starts off super serious. Nothing wrong with that, I love that shit. But if out of nowhere it were to completely switch into a comedy, the heavy tension that hooked you at the beginning would feel like a false promise, and it would make it pretty difficult to stay invested. The issue I have with many manhwa, they start off tense, but their own premise betrays them. Also, I'm not referring to the comedic scenes or moments, since even in the most tense of stories, those moments or characters are appreciated to help break tension and provide a little light in a pitch-black tunnel. But if a series for arc after arc was to switch up like that, I'm sure it would disappoint the fans. But by starting off as a comedy and slowly building up that tension, and then becoming mostly serious, you get a feeling that the series is getting better and better as it goes on. What was once running gags in the series remain as such, but are now given added context to where it becomes a little symbolic for the character. We'll get into how that pertains to Gintoki later on. The small bits of intrigue and foreshadowing of heavier elements to Gintoki are then revealed, but it's almost impossible to compare it to anything else, which is awesome. I'll give an example, starting off by giving one of my favorite monologues in manga, and then I'll give the context. Quote, "You laugh at me. No, people can laugh. Only you can be afraid. The heavens don't laugh. Plow the land and harvest it. That's life, Yuri. What am I talking about? As if I knew. The heavens don't laugh, they merely watch over, with a smile." This is from Vagabonds Farm arc. The context is Musashi is frustrated trying to plant and grow some food, but the rain keeps ruining that, as he contemplates his efforts to create and nurture life with his past, and all he knows is death. With a reflection of how the heavens merely watch us with a gentle indifference, and not with a cruel laugh. That's the context in Vagabond, but in Gintama, the context would be Gintoki saying that while wiping his ass and then realizing he has no toilet paper. It's absurdity like that, where some of the most impactful quotes are communicated via something that doesn't take itself that serious. Whether that's better or not is up to you, but what I can say is that it's a nice combo of unique and done well. It isn't a secret that I love these three as main characters, despite two of them being on hiatus and the third one making you take a mental hiatus. You know what, it's not even hiatus, it's LMAO get fucked. But stories like this and many others are a focused exploration where the world and other characters also contribute to a central theme, making us the audience feel immersed as we witness some of the past but mostly the present growth of who they are. We suffer, we cry, we are given hope watching these characters change in front of our eyes. Pun Pun even has a level of absurdity, but it's a much darker form of comedy early on. Gintoki, however, when we meet him, is a finished product for the most part from the beginning. A character that we don't necessarily see insane change from in the present, but if not through revelations of his past, it adds a whole new context to the character in retrospect. Good old flashbacks. Gintoki, though, is a piece of shit, but by the end of the series, the cast and even us as the audience is like, that's our piece of shit, damn it. So he starts off as a gambling addict, shitty boss, woman beater, lazy, fourth wall breaking, parfait enjoying, dumb knuckleheaded fuck, and also a pervert that doesn't pay his rent, but he's also dependable. A kind person who believes in others and protects those he cares about. Somebody who enjoys the simple things in life. But all of that comes from the growth of a man with somber eyes, and a tale wrapped in pain and tragedy. Yes, the man picking his nose and obsessed with a weather lady also goes by the nickname White Demon. In fact, his lazy nature and way of being is a response to taking life less seriously and enjoying the moment. It's almost like the mentor character who we get to see some glimpses into their past and why they try to live carefree. Uncle Iroh, Kakashi, but instead of them occupying the role of just mentor and side character, it's now the role of main character, saving these moments of sadness and sorrow that made Gintoki who he is, and instead early on, focusing on the comedy of the character, allows for running gags to be set up while foreshadowing the aforementioned things. When the series finally makes that tonal shift, the jokes can then be executed without affecting pacing and shooting itself in the foot. Elements to a character that we just don't really see from other stories. While I still love characters like the ones I listed, I definitely think Gintoki has unique flavor because of these aspects, lending to a strong case as one of the GOATs, at least for anime and manga. I don't like saying fiction. I don't know, I might have in the past, but it feels a little... Can I even say this? I don't know, it feels a little to only read manga and talk like you've read every book and poorly paced visual novel. But with that being said, who cares? If for you, Yuji Itadori is a goated main character, go crazy. Link me to a 5-hour-long video that says a whole bunch of nothing. My first 3 years on this platform was saying a whole bunch of nothing. I'm fighting that part of my brain that always wants to know why, but now let's get into Gintoki's current ideals. Actually, I think it's best if we delve into Gintoki's past first. Yeah, that'll let me end off the video better. Gintoki's childhood is largely a mystery before meeting the man that would change his life, an orphan child who was found in the middle of a battlefield. It is unsure if by this point he was violent and he was responsible for the death scene, although I won't rule it out, or it's most likely he was merely being the ultimate opportunist and scavenging the dead remains for money and food. Either way, being given a nickname by those who saw him, not a human or a poor child but seen as a crow, a sign of death and bad luck. It could be argued that seeing more of Gintoki during this period in his life than what we got would have been nice. In general, I do feel that way about Shoyo and actually seeing the pain and suffering that he endured, but overall I think it works regardless, especially when you consider that Gintama later on, in its first serious arcs, is so heavily plot-driven with so many different moving pieces that it could have hampered the pacing incredibly had it just chosen to focus extensively on a flashback arc. Nonetheless, he is found and then taken in by Shoyo, a kind man who adopted children and taught them the way of the sword and the way to live. It isn't hard to imagine that the man who would offer this to Gintoki would be the most important person in his life. That was the case for the others whom he grew up with during those essential years, Takasugi, Sakamoto, and Katsura being the prominent ones. Don't worry, we'll get into the dynamic between Gintoki and Takasugi in a bit. Shoyo is taken by a group of bad guys, and this part is super important. Gintoki is asked to promise to protect his comrades no matter what. The others find out about their beloved master being taken away, and so they grow up and join the rebellion of the samurai against the alien invaders. Small side tangent, not that this ruined my suspension of disbelief or anything, but if I pulled up with spaceships and laser guns and the people that I'm trying to conquer and invade only have samurai swords, and I don't win that war day one, you should be killed. You should not ever be allowed to say anything with the word war in it. Regardless, this is a time period where Gintoki would become an infamous legend along with his friends, and his life is changed forever. The Joy Wars, spelled J-O-I. Hey! Grow up. This is where Gintoki earned his nickname of the White Demon, and we learn the blood-soaked history between him, Katsura, and Sakamoto. Two characters that upon introduction, like most of the characters in Gintama, are presented and made memorable via their running gags and stupidity. I genuinely can't think of, and perhaps it's in an interview, so I'll look it up after I get this off my chest, but I can't decide whether Sorachi just made this shit up along as he went and he's the greatest improvisational writer of all time, or if he had this plan since the beginning. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, alright, no, alright, cool, yeah, he just made this shit up as he went along. What the fuck? Dude, that's fucking crazy. I didn't know that. I was just like, there's just no way. There's no way, and I think my own self-esteem couldn't handle somebody. Wow! Takasugi is a bit different. When he is introduced, it is made clear immediately that he and Gintoki are on bitter terms, even though that's an understatement. And it is here we get an explanation. Gintoki finds himself between a rock and a hard place, as Takasugi wishes for Gintoki to protect their master if Takasugi was incapable. But Gintoki has already promised his master to protect his comrades, no matter the cost. This comes to a tragic climax, when Gintoki, in order to save the life of his comrades, has to kill Shoyo, decapitating him in front of Takasugi. From Gintoki's perspective, Takasugi hates him for this and wishes revenge on Gintoki for his actions. But just like most things in Gintama, it's far more complicated than at first glance. Once again, more on that in a bit. The Joy Wars end in defeat, and Gintoki is tortured until ultimately being spared and crawling to a cemetery where an old lady finds him, and he is once again given purpose. A second chance at life. The old lady he doesn't pay rent to is Otose, a person that gave Gintoki a second wind in life by showing him kindness. Explaining his reaction in one of the most iconic scenes in Gintama, which I did say in the video, given Gintoki's laid-back disposition and often whimsical nature, it was quite the shock when he popped off with that kind of anger. It's like seeing a relative or a friend that is never mad finally pop off. It carries a different kind of weight to it. But it is very much in character for Gintoki, since the most important thing to him, even in the present moment, is to protect those he cares about. What we see from Sakata Gintoki is a man who has only known loss and misfortune, someone who failed to protect those he once cared about, hell-bent on protecting those that life has given him now and remaining true to himself. Quote, "People need to live their life with a clear conscience. When you want to walk on a straight path, somehow you'll get yourself stained with mud. However, as long as we never give up, one day the mud on you will dry up and fall off." End quote. Despite the suffering, his answer is kindness. Even when the demons of the past come back to test his resolve and remind him of his failures, he remains true to that purpose. In many of the early episodes of Gintama, you see Gintoki at the end helping many stay true to themselves and inspires them to live a life that they want instead of a life they live trapped by past suffering and present fear. You already know what I'm talking about. When this piano plays, get ready to wipe them tears. It's always a really powerful message, regardless if it's Guts, Gintoki, or Onizuka, but it's along the lines of find your own answer as to how you want to live life and stick with it. Sometimes I think we're a bit pushy as people in regards to how we think people should live life. While well-intentioned, we might be blind to the reality that what works for us won't work for someone else. Tragically enough, that maybe the way we are currently living is a product of the fear of suffering the same way again. Instead of moving forward, we stay in the same place and just bury it with sand. It isn't until something big happens that shakes our arrogant certainty and makes us realize that perhaps we are projecting our desires, our envy, our sadness, and anger onto others. Instead of encouraging others to live true to themselves, we ask them to live according to our way. Trapped in our own sorrows, we cannot comprehend how someone can live so freely and happily, so we assume they must have never suffered. Some of this is explored with Hijikata and Gintoki as they bump heads, one uptight and living to a code and the other is the epitome of lackadaisical. They start off rivals but end up close friends, understanding that what they had similar is more important than their differences. Some, however, don't see that until it is too late, or they have caused damage they can only atone for. Shinsuke Takasugi is an example of another character where Gintama is so good at setting something up, and yet whatever your expectations are, it goes above and beyond it. Shinsuke Takasugi, while witnessing Gintoki kill their master, lives a life fueled by hatred and revenge. Again, as stated earlier, Gintoki, from his point of view, believes Takasugi has it out for him specifically, since he didn't respect Takasugi's wish to protect their master. The truth, however, is Takasugi doesn't hold it against Gintoki. He understood the predicament that he was in. In fact, he is sympathetic enough to know that he probably would have done the same being in Gintoki's position, but what he can't fathom is how Gintoki has moved on with his life. To him, it's an insult, the carefree joy Gintoki lives with, since for Takasugi, the only thing keeping him alive is his hatred. Not for Gintoki, but for the world that took away his beloved teacher. Where Takasugi drowns in grief, Gintoki floats above it. That's the real rift between them. Not what happened, but how they each choose to live with it. Takasugi is defined by the wound. He carries it like armor, like purpose. His life became a protest, a rejection of a world that could allow their master's death to happen. Revenge isn't about justice for him, it's survival. It gives shape to his pain. Without it, there's nothing left. Gintoki, on the other hand, carries the same grief, more like a ghost. Quiet, invisible, but always there. He laughs, drinks, acts like nothing matters, but it's all a facade. He never truly moved on, he just buried the pain deep enough to keep functioning. Where Takasugi externalizes the loss, waging war ragefully against the world, Gintoki internalizes it. Pretending to a certain degree that he's fine because he has no idea how else to live, until he chooses to focus on those he has now. That's the contrast. It's not as simple as villain versus hero, although those roles could definitely be applied to the two of them. Not vengeance versus peace, but two men broken by the same moment. One who can't stop screaming, and one who refuses to make a sound. This is what is on display during their legendary fight, and in their final moments where Takasugi redeems himself, and how Gintoki, despite having just as much of a right to lash out, chooses to move on and walk until the mud falls off. One day, willing to join Takasugi in hell. He enjoys things like chocolate parfaits and watching the weather girl, things like playing pachinko and getting drunk with a Madao, although that went a little south, reading Weekly Shonen Jump and running a shitty odd jobs business, because there's no need to wage more wars. There's no need to remain in the past and feel hatred over what was lost, but instead enjoy the simple things of the now. The hardest thing is letting go, but refusing will rob you of years, maybe even a lifetime of wonderful new memories and new people that can be there to wipe the tears away. Don't stop yourself from living because you can't forgive others, or because you can't forgive yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back, love yourself, and treat yourself to some dessert every now and then. The other three, Sakamoto, Takasugi, and Katsura, each have strong purposes driven by the pain of the past, while Gintoki is just okay with living. He has his issues, and look, the answer isn't to become some alcoholic or gambling addict, but if not, that it's okay to just live. Like I said earlier, he's a piece of shit sometimes, but he's our piece of shit, damn it. He found a way to move on with the strength of others, because no matter how strong we think we are always stronger together. Every other character in Gintama is impacted by Gintoki, and his resolve to protect them, and his message to live life true to yourself. Gintama's cast is so strong, not only because of the way they are built up over time, and then matter in ways that come out of nowhere, but also because many of them serve as contrast serving a central theme. A series about an odd jobs company that will make fun of and reference everything under the sun, but also a battle shonen with a main character who will drop Plato-level nukes while skiing ass naked. I'm not sure if I've confessed this before with certain videos. I become drawn to a topic since I think exploring it will help bring me some clarity I need in the moment. Good, simple reminders of the fundamental things, the simple details lost in the chaos. I just hope that someone listening to this can also benefit. For those that are angry, sad, unsure of what the future holds, and for myself, when things become unbearable and all we can imagine is the end to our suffering, one might fall into the dark pit of embracing death. But if you've got time to fantasize about a beautiful death, why not live life beautifully until the end? Very few characters can make me contemplate and cry as hard as they can make me laugh, and remind me that when everything is thrown at you, the answer is to always live and respond with kindness. And that is why Gintoki is goated.